So welcome back, Melissa and Clayton, to the series about the foundation of the Wisdom Project. In this particular series, we are covering the Wisdom Project framework, the 7 cognitive styles or skills that we should cultivate, we should develop if we want to become wiser, if we want to reason better when confronted with challenging issues that we called wicked problems. It's not like going from my house to my workplace driving. It's a complex issue, but we have managed it, and it's composed of a series of mini tasks until I do the big task of going from my house to my office. But a complex issue such as, and I like to use this one, improving the relationship with my mother, has many facets, many dimensions. And as I work with them, I discover new things. That's a wicked problem. Like changing careers is a wicked problem. So we need wise reasoning, and that's why there is, it makes sense to try to cultivate it with something like the Wisdom Project courses. So let's see. What I did last week was to present a distinction between the fundamentals course that you both did as level 1 and level 2 participants. And I distinguished that from the foundations, which is the theoretical underpinning of the whole thing, the intellectual piece that you both were very curious to learn about. And the first thing I presented is that there is a strategy, or let's call it like a stance, approaching the development of wise reasoning, not as if we were doing science or as if we were doing art, but as if we were doing design, which is a very different type of inquiry, a very different type of investigation. And I like to use the example of Leonardo da Vinci, who was a scientist who pursued the truth, an artist who pursued beauty, but also a designer who pursued the good. The good of what? Of a particular project, a particular design that he was engaged with. And for us, even though we don't pay a lot of attention to what are the characteristics of design, in truth, we are all designers, designing, what we want our kids to be, designing how the dynamics of our families should go, or the dynamics of our workplace, in our community. We are always in this process of iterative, interactive, continuous improvement process. The 3 I's: interactive, incremental, and interactive. Iterative, incremental, and interactive process of design. I'm sitting in this very comfortable, ergonomic office chair, an expensive office chair, but this chair came to being after first being made fun of it. The people who invented it, I think it's called the Asian chair, put it on a window of a store in San Francisco to prove how horrible it was, how wrong design can go, and they put it on the window so people could walk and see, that you design mistakes. But then somebody was walking by and said, "Oh, that's so interesting, this chair," and bought it. And because he was a famous, Silicon Valley techie, his friends wanted more and wanted more, and now it's, it costs really a fortune, but it's an investment because anything you lose from it, they repair it. It's like a little jewel of design. But to create that chair, first you have to make mistakes, like thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is a horrible design." And the chair is ugly, yes, but it's comfortable. And then thousands and thousands of years of doing chairs. So we are designers who do not cultivate design in the same serious way that we cultivate art or science. And here we are taking this idea of design seriously, because we're trying to design a life of wisdom, a life where we can use wise reasoning to challenge, difficult, to tackle different problems in the world. So, how do we then approach the development? And I mentioned last time that we use a method called the real method, ritual engagement with artifacts, man-made things. Artifacts are design things in pursuit of what? Of transformation, the liminal, going from where we are right now to a space that we don't know exactly what we would be once we get there. Once I become wise, I'll be a different person. I'll see things differently. So that's what liminality means, entering into a space of transition when I don't know what is to the other side exactly. I have kind of an idea, as when, I was young and wanted to be a mom. I had an idea. I had a good mom. I saw my aunts, my friends, so many moms, but really the experience is completely different once you are a mom. So that's the idea. You are here, you want to be wise. You enter into the liminal process. And then once you have the experience of being a mom, it's different from what you were aspiring. So the first cognitive style or skill of our framework is aspiration, to aspire to be wise. To be wise like whom? To be wise like King Solomon, who is a perfect example of wisdom, not only because he was so wise that he's very famous, but because he was imperfect. Because there are two important elements when we talk about wisdom. Wisdom per se and foolishness, the opposite of wisdom. So King Solomon is so powerful because he was wise but foolish. And so by invoking him at the beginning of our transformational process, aspirational process, we feel empowered of dreaming to be sages, of dreaming to imitate or aspire to be a sage, because even the very famous King Solomon was not completely perfect. And we talked about the Solomon paradox, which is, that combination of foolishness and wisdom that Solomon had. And the fact that there is a psychologist who has proven that his problem is our problem, that his problem was that when he did not have psychological distance, when it was about his family, his children, his wife, his money, his business, he was totally foolish. But when people came to his presence for him to be a judge and to impart wise reasoning, he was really good at it. So taking that as an example, Igor Grossman has developed a series of experiments showing that it was not only Solomon. If I ask my nephew about a situation with his father, perhaps he won't be as wise if he tries to describe to me a problem that one of his friends is having with that friend's dad. So psychological distance is a very important concept that guides the whole journey of the Wisdom Project. For today, I want to focus on other elements of the experience. One element is, okay, I want to aspire. And I know, because Iris talked about that last time, that we use tools, and these tools, we call them mind tools or mindware, because it's not like we're going to practice with a tool to help us take psychological distance, and then we use it, and like a napkin, we just trash it, and that's it, gone. No. Once we have the tool, And we know that by taking psychological distance, I can start seeing an issue differently. Now I know that the tool works, and now I want to keep using it and using it and using it. So that's the whole idea, like being accompanied by mindware, not software, not hardware, mindware, things that we are going to be used to take psychological distance. Do you have an example of this week? If you went to see your family, if you were confronted with a problem where you thought of, okay, wisdom by design, mindware, psychological distance, how do I use this? How do I bring that napkin from our first conversation about the wisdom foundational framework into this particular situation? And if it didn't happen, that's okay.
So I did. Something comes to mind that I was working with a student, and I had a patient who came in that I thought was appropriate for the student to sit in. And as will happen sometimes, I was working with the person I knew well, and the patient turned and started talking to the student, and the student, caught off guard, was very uncomfortable, did a fine job navigating back, saying, I I'm not making decisions about your care. I'm going to defer to your,
This
your
is a medical
provider.
student who will
Mm-hmm.
become a psychiatrist.
Yes. And so, but it was interesting, the psychological distance of watching that happen to the student. And, if I'm in a situation where I'm caught off guard and I don't know what to say, I think I'm harder on myself. But when you observe the development of a student, you can really understand the stages you have to go through to get comfortable navigating these complicated, let's throw you a curveball, an unexpected interaction that's thrown your way. And there are many of these things that I have techniques for, or I learned about, but with the psychological distance of watching it happen to the student, I could really see the development of the skill set over time. I mean, you don't walk in with those skills, you have to practice. And so that was really interesting, and I thought about it there.
Great.
I had
Go
I
ahead.
also had an interesting experience, not in that sense, but I had to take feedback about some work I had done for my client, and I was challenged to as to why I had not applied a specific approach, which I'm very familiar with. In agile consulting, you the first thing you always come up with is a plan, and you always emphasize the parameters of what you want to engage with. But I skipped that step. And I was not aware that I had, right?
Yeah, because without a plan, the project becomes a multidimensional beast. So
Yes.
part of the art of being a consultant is to be able to define the problem in a way that you can deliver in 3 weeks and a half. That's the art of it, that the client gets so impressed. Oh, he said 3 weeks and a half, and then, of course, things change and you dissolve that and then you go, because it's a design process, iterative, interactive, and increment. So without a plan, I don't know. What happened?
It just went beyond the expected time frame, and it was unexpected. But of course, there were factors that led to that. The client did not encourage that, so we ended up in that situation. However, when reviewing it and taking that psychological distance and taking a look back and trying to investigate what happened, it was very clear that we did not come up with a plan, like a successful plan. And it was a surprise, because this is something we would normally do if we are actually thinking about it, but somehow we all lacked the awareness to build one, and we missed it, and we ended up in this situation where we're doing this work that is not getting completed. simply because we're missing something, a very important step, but we were not aware that we were doing it until we took a step back to review.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I also had my own insights through psychological distancing, and I have been very amused since it happened. I had even I'm gonna write a little story. I call them parables about this old lady who has been criticizing. Well, it's me. Years ago, I started noticing that my friends were becoming so picky, irritable. They were willing to make a lunch disagreeable because the waiter didn't do A or B, or they were willing to get mad at their family member because of little things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening to her? I hope it won't happen to me. And even I can say that there are a few friends that I don't see as often because in my theory of life, I have come to realize that life has become so comfortable because the kids are out of the home. You have a lot of flexibility with your time and work. So you get irritated when things are not completely in flow, when things are not completely smooth. So I'm very much aware of that. And that's it. I try not to be like that. But I had a moment. I lost my debit card. The bank was perfect. I said, I have an appointment. No problem, just 3 minutes. And they printed my new debit card. And I was so happy. So I went to my appointment. And when I was getting ready to go into my appointment, this bubble, I call them bubble, this thought came to the surface. And the thought was this: oh, so many problems. Now I have to go home and see if anybody stole my key or my debit card. And it was so funny because the thought was coming and literally, oh my gosh. And then immediately another thought came. Oh, look at the old lady complaining about stupid things. It was so funny. And that's for me psychological distance. A part of me took psychological distance from the one that wanted to complain. And of course, I went through my meeting. I came home and it took, 10 minutes, perhaps 5 minutes to check that nobody has taken money from the old debit card and now got canceled. That's it. But anyway, I've been really, really amused about my own Karen. Karen, here in America, Clayton, I don't know if you have it in Australia, but there is this story about a woman who is so picky that is complaining about everything. And I don't know, they call her Karen. So
yeah, we have them as well.
okay. So I was thinking the Karenification of Iris. I was about to become a Karen. And fortunately, because I'm mindful, I just caught myself in the act of becoming a Karen. And it was so funny that I was on Tuesday and I've been laughing at myself the whole week. So that's another example of psychological distancing. As once you said to me, Clayton, it's not that I want to be enlightened, is that every day I want to walk close to the light, and these little insights are little moments of enlightenment. So now I'm vigilant and soft vigilance. I am practicing soft vigilance against the Karenification of Iris. And that's mindfulness, the second cognitive style of the framework. We aspire to be like King Solomon. And then the second skill is we are mindful of the process of being alive, of being present. So, for instance, in my case, I don't let myself become a Karen. You have any comments or feedback about this?
Well, I like this term Karenification, but I work with a Karen who's very sweet, so I feel bad. I just have to say that in defense of lovely people who are named Karen. I'm so sorry that this is taken your name, but it gives us a snapshot that we can call up very quickly. It's a shorthand, and I like your word, Karenification. I'll work on this similarly, not not becoming that grumpy, impatient, picky, wanting everything to always be perfect person. It can't be. There are always going to be problems to solve. And I laugh at myself like that. So I like your word.
Even in our culture, we have political problems, we have social challenges, we have economic, socio-political, economic big challenges that we don't know how they're going to be solved. But we have to always to remember that people used to live an average time of 37 years, 200 years ago. People used to have 10 or 8 or 9 children, and a few of those reached adulthood. That 80% of the planet lived in poverty 50 years ago. So there are challenges, but we don't have to Karenify the situation, because as I was telling a group of people last week, I don't have any brother or sister or family member who died fighting a war. I don't have any family member who lost a child at an early age, because medicine and the water now, medicine helps, and the water now is clean. So not trying to get, oh my gosh, so many problems, when there are so many good things. So the first one then is aspiration, to aspire to be sage. And the second one is to be mindful, to be all the time observing what you are doing. So you decide or not to go into the bubble of Karen, for instance. It seems simple, but it's not. I have been doing mindfulness for more than 20 years, and I still caught myself in the act of going, oh no, this past Tuesday, just being a Karen. And loving it, loving the imperfection of being human, loving it, and being able to laugh about the difficulty. So let's see. We talked about Solomon and how imperfect he was despite his wisdom, how foolish he could be. And now when we talk about mindfulness, I like to talk about, of course, this sage called Buddha Gautama, the Prince Gautama, who abandoned the palace where he grew up in the nice, comfy life that he was destined to enjoy, and decided to become a monk, a mendicant monk, because, as he said to himself, I have everything, but that's not life. I want to be, but I don't know what I want to be. So he left the having mode and moved to the being mode. And in moving that into the being mode, he discovered that by being mindful, by being able to pay attention, catching himself in the act of being alive and thinking, he could gain wisdom. He improved his wise reasoning. So we use also, as we did with aspiration, the example of Solomon, aspiring to be Solomon, when we talk about mindfulness as a cognitive style that we can develop, as a muscle that we can develop by practicing. The muscle that we rely on is the muscle that the Buddha developed. And we use a tool, a mind tool, that I love, and as I said, I have been practicing for many years, called the body scan, which is a different way of being in the world, of being present in the world. And the body scan is the core of the mindfulness practice, is the core of many different methods of mindfulness practice, and it's basically based on the following. Once you scan the body, basically you go from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet in a sequence that I guide, and I will be recording, and there will be a whole series where I explain one by one all the mindware, all the tools of the Wisdom Project fundamentals. But here, because it's the intellectual piece of it, the foundation, so I'm just going to say that one of the tools, the mindware, is the body scan, where we pay attention to what is called in mindfulness meditation, the triangle of awareness. The triangle is because it has three parts: paying attention to the thoughts, noticing the thoughts, paying attention to the sensations of the body, noticing the sensations of the body, and paying attention to the emotions, noticing the emotions. And while we do the body scan, I'm not talking about the triangle of awareness all the time, but it's what's guiding me. And so it's a very important mind tool for the practice of mindfulness, the second cognitive style. Anything you want to add or comment about that?
Well, I'll comment that as I went through the course, I had a conversation with you about this at some point, that particular tool I thought would not be very helpful. And I was sure. And then it became the most helpful tool. And I remember you saying, I knew it. It is the most helpful tool. It's the most helpful for me. And I think because it's a way, it is taking distance, right? You're having thoughts that are pulling you in. There's some problem that you can't solve going over and over in your mind, and you stop and scan the body, and then you're have distance from the thought and get recentered and can see more clearly. And it's always available. It's a series of guided steps. It's very straightforward. You can go lightly or deeper. It's very, very helpful tool. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's so, well, thanks to the Buddha, and thanks to all the pioneers who brought it to the East, to the West, particularly my teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, who created the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, where in 8 weeks you can teach basically the body scan and other techniques about paying attention and noticing the triangle of awareness. That also is called Soft Vigilance by Ellen Langer. She's a psychologist who's the first person, even before John Kabat-Zinn, to write about mindfulness, that in a book that became very popular, the soft vigilance of our bodies, of our awareness, of our presence. That's how she calls it. And everything starts there. I am always surprised. I have been teaching mindfulness for about 25, 23 years. And basically, the only piece of intellectual work that we teach is this triangle of awareness. You know, pay attention to the sensations, pay attention to the emotions, pay attention to the thoughts, noticing while doing the body scan, scanning the body for these three elements. And over, when we are in class 6 or 7, somebody asks, Iris, what is the triangle of awareness? Even though I have been repeating it from the beginning. And it's because it's so novel, Melissa, as you said, oh, I don't need that. That's not, it's so novel once you have it. It's just, people forget that I did the introduction, at least to make them a little more curious about something that looks tedious, like scanning the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts over and over. And when we do it in the Wisdom Project, it's very short, like 5-7 minutes. But when we do it in a training mindfulness program, it's 40 minutes of the body scan. Any comments or questions?
I like this body scan technique, and I've been also, you know, applying it to other people around me, where you'll notice someone really going too fast, especially like, you know, young children. They're trying to narrate to you what's going on, and they're skipping over their own story and getting stuck in it. You know, you just ask them to, hey, just stop. You can take your time, you know, just have a breath and relax a little bit, and let's try to go like we don't have to go anywhere. And just taking a moment to just settle down a bit and take a breath, it changes the whole environment. And then they tell the whole story without, you know, stumbling over themselves. It's just really amazing to watch.
Well, your children are lucky to have you teaching them that skill set. Stop and smell the flowers. Okay, so we spoke about Socrates, we spoke about Solomon and Buddha, and now I'm going to speak about Socrates because he lived many years after Solomon, many years after the Buddha, 2,500 years ago. That's more or less when Socrates lived, but he also gave us a mind tool, the tool of the dialogue, the Socratic dialogue. Instead of engaging in conversation back and forth as we regularly do to be efficient, to stop and design a conversation where you listen and craft a response based on what the person said without challenging them, without offering new ideas, just basically repeating to be sure that you understood what the person tried to say. And there are many different types of dialogue, and I will be recording, you know, one video about that. But we use one type of dialogue in the Wisdom Project Fundamentals course, which is called mindful conversation. So we do the body scan that awakens us to being in the world, in emotions, sensation, and thought. And we also practice repeatedly with mindful conversation, mindful dialogue should be called. Well, but dialogue, you know, it's per se mindful, so it's mindful conversation. And the one that we use, and not because it's better, but because it's easier, is what its creator, Tanya Singer, calls intersubjective conversation, intersubjective meditation. That's how she calls it. Tanya Singer is a affective neuroscientist from Germany. She leads an affective neuroscience research group at an institute, the Planck Institute in Germany. And basically, she has shown that when people practice this intersubjective meditation, not just meditating by yourself, as the Buddha taught, and we have been practicing forever, but using the same awareness of noticing to engage in interaction with the other. So taking meditation, kicking meditation out of the meditation room, kicking meditation out of the self. That's what we do. We do the body scan. You see now how it makes sense? I hope it makes sense to you now that I'm explaining it. You do the body scan and gain this new fine-grained awareness of what's happening with being you. And then we take that out into the world with this particular tool called the mindful conversation, which is based on Tanya Singer intersubjective meditation, which is basically paying attention to the other, what the other is saying, repeating what the person said, making sure that you are understanding the other person as the other person wants to be understood. In that iterative, interactive, and incremental process, you gain a better understanding of what the person was saying. Perhaps you start seeing little holes in the presentation, or you start being curious about little details, taking it very, very seriously, noticing it with soft vigilance. That's what we do in the mindful conversation. And these two tools, the body scan and the mindful conversation, travel with you through the development of the 7 skills or cognitive styles, because what I'm pursuing is that you're going to be using them not as a, this, how do you say desechable in Spanish?
Possible.
Disposable napkin. It's not a disposable napkin. The body scan is 2,500 years old, invented by the Buddha. And the mindful conversation is more or less 2,300 years old, invented by Socrates. We're going to take these two tools for the particular challenge that we brought to the Wisdom Project, but the hope is that we will carry it with ourselves and continue cultivating the 7 cognitive styles of the Wisdom Project that hopefully will make us reason better, become wiser. Does it make sense now? Why we repeat the body scan? Why we repeat the mindful conversation over and over? With so many other tools, but these two are central.
And I would say in the process, you know, the course itself was practice, right? Not less theory. This is the theory. It made sense, but my intellect wanted more information. But in a experiential sense of going through and practicing the practice, something was working. I just wanted to know why.
This is exactly the purpose of this series. Why Iris did this. Why? And we have it. Because, and can you see that I couldn't use the experience of being in the program and do the intellectual piece too? Or do you think I don't think it's possible.
Well, I think it would take too much time. But also, I think when you're being with your intellect, you're not being present in the moment in the same way. And switching back and forth is something that can be difficult for people. So I think, you know, you sit in a seminar and you have the PowerPoint slides or something, and that's very different than when you're learning a dance or something. And it can be difficult to shift between, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's very difficult to shift between the intellectual and the experience, because I think it just takes, you're spread too thin, right? Like you can't be in both places at the same time. Yeah.
That is what John Vervaeke calls the 4 Ps, the 4 ways of knowing. The participatory, which is to participate in an experience, in a ritual, and you sense, you emote the experience, you connect with others in an intersubjective way. That's the participatory. The perspectival is, you know, this is me having this experience, having this event. Then the procedural is learning how to do something like the body scan, learning how to do the mindful conversation. And then the propositional, which is using words to explain, oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh, this is the body scan and I'm doing it because of da-da-da. So those 4, that distinction that Vervaeke introduced is very helpful, because as he says that we live within the tyranny of language, because the propositional is language, words. So we want to know the why and explain it. And we forget that there is another layer, which is the participatory, that is experiential. And they are different. And in my modest personal experience, but 20 years of teaching mindfulness, is that the simplest concept of the triangle of awareness, pay attention to the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts, is a very simple thing that I keep repeating. I always had a whiteboard in my back, and before at the beginning of the class, I draw the triangle of awareness, and still class number 6 or 7, somebody goes, what is the triangle of awareness? Why? Because the class is so participatory, with so much body scan, noticing the sensations and emotions, that we don't have time to put it in words, which is the propositional. So,
And I think too that if you, I mean, Vervaeke talks about this, and that the propositional has taken over and is served in our societies, in Western culture, as a replacement for the participatory and the other kinds of knowing. And I think if you focus on the propositional, then people have an intellectual idea and stop there, or want to stop there and say, I've been told, I know what it is. I didn't do it, but now that I know in my thinking, I could do it, but I've never done it, but I know what I need to know. And that's not true.
yeah, because when people are in the having mode, they know what to do. They have the concepts, the idea, the theory. But that doesn't, I know that I should not smoke, but I still smoke. I know that I should not drink Coca-Cola, but I still do it. So having the knowledge doesn't mean experiencing and being transformed by that knowledge. And that's, we have lost awareness of that, because there is so much to have, so much knowledge to have, so many degrees, so many books to read. And then we don't experience. But because we aspire to be wise, we aspire, oh my goodness, to be at least a little like Solomon, or a little like Buddha, or a little like Socrates. Wow, big aspiration. That means we are willing to be transformed. We are willing to be different that we were when we started. And to do that, we have to experience. As one of you just said, you cannot learn to ride a bike just by reading about bike riding. You cannot learn to swim just by reading about it, or get into a lecture about swimming. You cannot become a good cook. Like, you cannot become a good cook unless you play, you interact in repetitive interactions and small improvements with the materiality of what you want to develop. Therefore, yeah, go ahead, Clayton.
It's interesting you mentioned about cooking, and I remember trying to learn how to barbecue. I always saw some friends of mine doing it, and it's very interesting. Like, oh wow, I like what they're doing, and you see the end result. It's amazing, but it's difficult to start because you don't know the range. Like, will I burn it? Will it be undercooked? But you have to try for yourself, and then you will burn it, and you go, oh, okay, so maybe not that far. And then maybe you try a different way, and then you won't get ready, and it's like, oh, maybe not this slow, until you keep improving between the new limits until you get it right. But like you said, you have to repeat, and you have to try again and try again and try again. And it's in the trying again, all those experiences, they give you they draw the map of where you need to explore. And then where you're working. And it's not something you can just read about. It's something it's a journey you have to take.
Exactly. You cannot swim, you cannot take the responsibility of swimming. You have to teach your child to swim. You cannot say, okay, don't worry, I'll do it for you. You can perhaps brush their teeth up to a point, but there are things that they have to embody. That's another important concept. They have to embody. So the difference between saying it in words, the propositional, and having the participatory experience is what now it's called, and it's becoming more and more popular, experiential learning. So instead of sitting in a classroom listening to the teacher now creates experiences, participatory experiences for the students. Another pedagogy, besides experiential learning, is project-based learning. It has been proven over and over that if you engage the students with a project they care about, their learning is more potent. There is a transformation, there is growth in the student. And the third pedagogy that is important for us and for what we do at the Wisdom Project is peer-based learning, being taught by the peer, by the participants. So the intersubjective meditation does that for us. So yes, there is a lot of intellectual knowledge to be shared, and that's the foundation. But when you go in through the experience, it's completely participatory because it's one, experiential, two, project-based learning, and three, peer-based teaching. So that's why I say you have to commit to come to each one of the sessions of the course because you're going to be a teacher. You're going to be as important as me. You are going to be teaching others. So if you miss one session, you will be missed. There will be something missing from the group. And I believe that the regularity that I have seen people making the effort in coming to every class is due to that responsibility that the participatory experience creates for us. Any thoughts about that? Okay. So why do we do this? We do this, again, because we want to develop as wiser reasoners. We do this because we want to engage in the process of wisening ourselves. And what happens? What happens when Iris notices, oh, I am becoming a Karen? What happens is I'm losing the cognitive grip on reality that I had. You know, it took me a bunch of years to become a teenager and then to become an adult person. So I kind of have a grip on life. I know how to proceed. I know how to act. I know how to, and that's very, very helpful. And therefore, I have stories about what I should do or shouldn't do, what should have happened, how should A or B person in my life should react. That's called a cognitive grip. But if we do this and we keep, you know, very, very rigid and tight control of our cognition, meaning the way we solve problems, the way we learn, the way we memorize, the way we reason, if we keep it very, very tight, then we don't change. So bye-bye to the idea of becoming like Solomon or like Buddha or like Socrates. Bye-bye, because we have this cognitive grip. To try to go against that, our tendency of, I know it all, I have done it all, I don't need to be taught anything. To go against that tendency that we all have is natural. I invoke what I call the 4 commitments, and I repeat them all the time, which are kindness, compassion, presence, SSSS. See, no, this is, I'm looking for it. Presence, courage, compassion, and kindness. Please engage in this journey of transformation with presence, courage, compassion, and kindness. Because you are going to discover at a particular moment, and it's going to surprise you that you're about to become a Karen. I should have added humor, because after doing this for so many years, suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm a Karen. All right, any comments about that?
So, Clayton and I both went through level 1 and level 2, and in the two different groups, because I participated then in the project with two different groups, and there were different personalities of the group. The group as a whole took on a different shape, and in particular with I know this in one group and really not having that in the other group. It's interesting. I think it was not just the individual personalities, but the process of the group itself being a group came to some of that. It's very interesting what you're talking about, because I do think that some of it seems so simple. If you've done a body scan before and you say, oh, I know this, but to use it for the purpose of going through steps to work to become wiser is something probably you've not exactly done it that way. And to stay with the process, being in the moment without the intellectual overlay and the propositional knowing, and just, see what this is like and go through it. But it's interesting how the different groups behaved with regard to, I know this. I don't know, but Clayton, maybe you saw the same thing in your experience.
Yeah, I did. It's interesting you bring that one up, because while you're describing that, I was reminded of in the level 2 group, there was a lot of, it happened a number of times where we would get stuck in the language, in the definitions of what these things really mean, and trying to focus on the intellect as opposed to the experience. Yet, some of us were just coming back for the second time. We were very aware of the experience, so we had never really paid attention to the language. It's like, oh, what does it mean? Different things. I just thought it means this experience, right? Because you're mapping it onto the experience. But I think that's that really stood out in an interesting way for me as well. Yeah.
And because the experience is different every time, even if we are alone in a meditation room, the experience is different every time. You can do level 1, level 2, and level 3, 4, 5, and every time will be different. It's like for me, the big surprise last Tuesday of my potential Karenification. So when you pay attention, we are alive. There is the richness of the interaction with the environment. So if we pay attention, we can be then transformed. And that transformation comes through because we are noticing through reframing, to noticing that I was going to go, oh, what a problem. I know, it was so funny. The two irises, like Clayton, that you talk about the two means, the iris saying that, oh, what a big problem. And the other iris, oh my goodness, you are talking like an old lady. So that process of transformation is what we are looking for. And the only way it happens is when we experience with humility. And I think of the philosophers that for 2,000 years are thinking about what is beauty, what is the good life, what is this and that. And, I respect that, but at the same time, they never reach a conclusion because it's all about words. It's all about language. It's all about propositions. It's not the experience. So words are helpful, otherwise we couldn't communicate. But what is transformative is the experience of swimming, the experience of cooking, the experience of walking, the experience of dancing, the experience of being in the here and now, which is the journey of the Wisdom Project. So there is one additional, let's see, yeah, one additional tool that is important for the development of the cognitive style of mindfulness is to be able to recognize impediments that, even if I want to pay attention, or even if I don't want to drink soda, I have a sweet tooth. I like sweet. And this beverage has artificial sweeteners that make me think I'm eating sugar, but without the calories. So there is a natural tendency or a personal experience or whatever has conditioned us to slow the possibility of transformation, of growth, of becoming wiser. So at this stage, when we introduce mindfulness, I have found that this particular exercise is very, very helpful. It is called focusing. And if you Google the Focusing Institute or Eugene Gendlin, the creator of focusing, is a very old, I don't know, he created it in the 1970s, but it's very helpful. And I have found in my professional life and with my participants in the Wisdom Project that this particular tool of focusing on a project or a problem and then trying to get rid visually, imagining that we are putting what impedes or impeds, what blocks the manifestation of our project. We put it in a remote island. That thing, that little focusing exercise, that I'm not going to go through the details here, but because it's everywhere and you can follow the steps, has proven very, very easy for people to get rid of the roadblocks to transformation. So the body scan, the mindful conversation, and the focusing exercise are very powerful when we start the journey of aspiration and mindfulness towards wise reasoning. Okay, so thank you very much.